Don in London, hello. It's the 29th of December. My video's all about recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour. My addictive substance, alcohol, my behaviour equally addictive, around people, places, things, behaviour. So, why? I don't know. I just became addicted. Maybe it was because of fear, putting on a brave face and a very thin ego, which, if you punctured it, there was nothing underneath. And the way I dealt with life, so it didn't hurt me, was probably to drink, to buy, to take people hostage, to find myself in locations which I felt were safe and stay there, like inside and not outside, inside my head and not outside my head. So what did addiction do for me? Nothing other than make me feel capable in my own world, and then completely incapable of dealing with the outside world. Drink to take the edge off, drink to fix me, drink because I'm joyful, drink because I'm sad. Always drinking alcohol. And that was for 35 years. So these days, for a few years, I don't drink, one day at a time. And it took an awful lot of effort to drink that much for so long. And what I found in recovery, it's not as hard to stay sober as it is to keep on drinking. And I don't want to die on a daily basis, or at least I feel like I don't want to die on a daily basis. I want to find out more about what life is today, in the moment. So I'm very lucky. Family, friends, community, professionals all kept me alive long enough to get to the realization of one thing. I can't beat addiction on my own. This is my own personal outlook. I couldn't do it on my own. I needed help from people who had probably gone through the same awkward, horrible, fearful, downward spiral into addiction, and then come out of it. And what I learned was the most successful at coming out of it, and only successful for a day at a time, were those who got together and stayed together and talked about their experiences, their strength and hope of staying sober. And that was in a fellowship. And for me the fellowship was AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. And the good news is, I'm one of many voices. In fact, I'm just one voice amongst millions who stay sober one day at a time and have a good life and a happy life, and sometimes ecstatically joyful life. And the opposite as well. We take life on life's terms these days. I don't speak for AA, never can, never will, never want to, because it is full of unique, authentic people who share their experience, strength and hope where they will. Simple as that. So my purpose behind these videos, sharing a message of hope and something about the fellowship of AA in a general way, and something about recovery in a general way, and how I have been helped by the fellowship. The fellowship, as we call it, is simply the unique, authentic people you meet if you go to a meeting of AA on a daily basis. And behind that are trusted servants who keep the whole show on the road. A little bit of long-term planning, which is required for a fellowship to remain, I suppose, ongoing. But it's timeless, because it's based on one day. And there's no hierarchy in AA. No one can tell you what to do, which is a godsend, because if anybody did try and tell us what to do, we'd probably do the opposite, simply because that's the way we are, contrary. So what is AA? I will share the AA preamble here, and it may seem repetitive, but that's what life is, often repetitive, doing some things which are good for us on a regular basis, so we have a pattern of life. So the AA preamble, I read it out rather than recite it. If I recited it, it would just be a monologue, but it still is, but at the same time it slows me into the moment of my purpose here. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism on a daily basis. The only requirement for membership is the desire to stop drinking. That's it. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. Doesn't mean you've stopped already, doesn't mean you're going to stop. It's just a desire to stop, or at least find out how to. There are no dues or fees for AA membership, so in other words, if you have no money, it doesn't matter. If you have a few pennies to put in the pot to cover the coffee and the rent for a room, not that you would pay it all, but the greater number can take the burden. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, but everybody in it is allied to something. And we declare it, and so you know where we're coming from, but we are in our rooms for a particular reason. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, this is the fellowship. Neither endorses nor opposes any causes, and that's the fellowship again. But everybody in the fellowship does those things, outside the fellowship. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and be unique and authentic in ourselves, and find out who we are on a daily basis, and help excuse me, and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And in that, encapsulated in those 2 paragraphs, is what AA is all about, and what it can do for us and what it can't do. It can't fix us, but it can show us the way if we have a desire to be sober one day at a time. So people who come to AA, they're thrown through the doors for some reason or other, like I was by my sister, who was completely beyond understanding what had gone on for me. And she said, she took me one Sunday morning and she said, go through there and sort yourself out. And as a consequence of being thrown through the doors of AA, I met my neighbours, my people who I knew from the gym, people I knew from around the area in which I lived, and from the arts club as well, and my mum's best friend in the front row, who said, it's about time you got here, isn't it? And of course, what did I do as a rebellious alcoholic? I stayed long enough to say, yes, I must be an alcoholic, and shocked by the experience, I suspect, I went straight to the local pub at the end of the road, the Trafalgar, and it was 5 years later that I got back again to a meeting of AA, and even then I wasn't a very good student. So, you know, we find our path in life, and I was submerged again for a few years, struggling with my own self-will, self-obsession, trying to do it on my own, thinking I'll be a lesser person if I accepted help, because I was taught to stand on my own 2 feet and take it like a man, and be the last man standing when it came to bar drinking, and the last man standing in any situation, working myself into the ground, always for other people. So what did recovery do for me? It gave me a sense of identity, that maybe I ought to do a bit of work on myself, so I was able to enjoy my life, rather than to be totally under the thumb of doing the next right thing in terms of money, materialism, and not really understanding what my feelings were, or what spiritual might be in my life. So that's how I got there, and it was not nice, that journey. It was full of enormous highs in terms of being places, doing things, running like crazy at anything to prove that I was all right, and I didn't need to do that, but I did in my own story. That was my path, and I was trying to work out what these crazy feelings were inside me, and I really didn't know. I knew how to love. I felt I knew how to love, but it was desperation which drove me to extremes of trying to hold things together, when maybe they would have been better falling apart and me restarting. So if we get stuck one way, doing the same old thing again and again, it's insanity. But if we can actually say, hang on a minute, we're going in the wrong direction, let's put the brakes on and have a consultation with myself and other people. Am I on the right path? These days I take a bit of advice from the experience and wisdom that other people have, whereas before it was a collision with whatever next. So, a bit more about me there. Daily reflections I cover here, which is 1 page a day, covering the 12 steps for personal growth and the 12 traditions for unity, service and recovery in fellowship. So I was not a fan of AA. In fact, I hated the idea of it. It was taking away the one thing I thought was going to save my life. At one stage, or for many years, I thought drink was the answer to all my problems today. And now I find that sobriety is the answer to all my problems today. So it's the exact opposite of what I thought was right. So my thinking kept me drinking, and now my feelings tend to keep me sober on a daily basis with the help of fellowship, family, community. And that's all to the good. So I'm ambling on a bit here. But in this one, December 29th, joy of living. Therefore, the joy of good living is the theme of AA's 12th step. AA is a joyful program. Well, it wasn't at first, because it made me miserable, because it took away the one thing I thought I needed. Even so, I occasionally balk at taking the necessary steps to move ahead. That's the 12 suggestions, principles of living. And I find myself resisting the very actions that could bring about joy I want. In other words, if I let go and let good things happen, rather than try and control them, joy is assured, because I'm part of something bigger. I would not resist if those actions did not touch some vulnerable area of my life, an area that needs hope and fulfillment. Repeated exposure to joyfulness has a way of softening the hard outer edges of my ego, and what I know my ego is there to cover up is my fear and my brave face. Therein lies the power of joyfulness to help all members of AA. And you know, we're not a glum lot, as some people say, but when we're first there, in the rooms of AA, shivering denizens of the realm of alcohol, and we have colourful language in our books, and it's not just to strike fear into people. We're all fearful of change to a certain extent, but when we got stuck in a pattern we can't cope with and we can't get out of, the fear is enormous of being found out, guilt, shame, all the rest of it. And that's another reason why I do these videos, because I'm not guilty or shameful anymore about falling into an addiction, which is a disease in my opinion. But you have to come to your own opinion about what it is. And the worst thing in sobriety is self-prejudice, being prejudiced against ourselves and covering up or hiding our recovery. And sometimes we don't even tell people we've got the disease or the malady because it's a personal choice, and that is absolutely sacrosanct. Anonymity provides the foundation to find the truth of who we are. But we don't need to share the nitty-gritty with everybody if we choose not to. The fortunate news for me was I was never anonymous in my drinking days, and I've not been anonymous in my sober days either. And it makes no difference other than people see me differently today, to an extent. Anyway, 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, this book, and 12th step, which I'm very fond of because it helps me, and the short sentence which it covers what the 12th step is all about, if I can find it now, because I'm on the page where I want to read from. It says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry his message to alcoholics, and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So practicing these principles, the 12 steps of living are, living the steps, 12 steps, not as robots. It's freedom of choice it gives us. That's the whole thing. Freedom to live free, to make choices around how life is today, to make the best of life on life's terms. And that doesn't mean always joyful. It often means it's the opposite of joyful, extreme sadness. But we settle down somewhere in the middle where we feel joy and sad, as it is today, not as we might wish it to be. So there is a passage in here which again covers the 12 steps. And the reason why I share it is coming up to the end of the year, and the 12 steps to me are amazingly helpful in my life. So it says here on page 110 of the large edition, AA's manner of making ready to receive this gift lies in the practice of the 12 steps in our program. So let's consider briefly what we've been trying to do up to this point. Step 1 showed us the amazing paradox. We found that we were totally unable to be rid of the alcohol obsession, until we first admitted that we were powerless over it. And it took me a long time to admit that I was powerless over alcohol, and also to accept it. And what I've found is that acceptance is a daily way of living. We accept who we are and what we are, and then we can make the best of what we have. In step 2, we saw that since we could not restore ourselves to sanity, some higher power must necessarily do so if we were to survive. And my higher power is the truth, love and wisdom of the planet as it is. So truth, love and wisdom comes at me through people and through the outside world, not what's going on in my head, which often makes it isolated, self-fulfilling, controlling prophecy. So if I don't try and control it or make it prophetic, I'm onto a winner. I'm a part of life, and life is happening. Consequently, in step 3, we turned our will and our lives over to the care of God, or good conscience, as we understood him. And when it says understood him, we understood him, actually it's your personal understanding of a higher power, your personal faith in what it is that makes life happen. And that can be God, good conscience, as you choose to and come to understand. And in my life I've been an atheist, agnostic and believer, and presently I have a fairly, I suppose, simplistic or very simple outlook. Truth, love and wisdom is outside me and bigger than me. So that's my higher power, and some call it God, and that's fine. I don't mind calling it God either, because it's bigger than me and I don't know the answers. So a higher power than me, let go and let good things happen, has been an absolutely wonderful experience. For the time being, we who were atheist or agnostic discovered that our own group of AA as a whole would suffice as a higher power. Yes, balanced with all the people I know outside it as well, which is about life in general, but inside the fellowship it's about how to be sober, and that is a power far greater than me, than many voices of AA. Beginning with step 4, we commenced to search out the things in ourselves which had brought us to physical, moral and spiritual bankruptcy. So physically, I had to be revived more than once. Morally, I don't know what my morals were. And spiritual bankruptcy. Spiritual for me is the connection to now, the absolute reality of now. So I was bankrupt in all those areas, and stuck under the thumb of something which I could not control at all, a substance called alcohol. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory, and the moral inventories are assets and liabilities, what made us angry and resentful, what kept us going, how we felt life. Looking at step 5, we decided that an inventory taken alone wouldn't be enough. We knew we had to quit the deadly business of living alone with our conflicts, and in honesty confide these to God and another human being. And the key there is confession of how we were, all the things that happened, where the resentments and anger came up, and what we really did in terms of good things and bad things. So assets and liabilities. At step 6, many of us, and sharing with another person doesn't mean it has to be a sponsor in AA. You share it with the person that you trust, and that can be to God and good conscience and another human being. The truth out of us, expression of and letting go. But we've got to do something with what we've done. So what did we learn from step 4 and doing step 5, sharing it with another human being? We found our assets and liabilities. So at step 6, many of us balked for the practical reason that we did not wish to have all our defects of character removed, because we still loved some of them too much, and control, manipulation, power, the right to be angry, the right to be resentful. All those things didn't work for us, they just kept us stuck in old patterns. So the defects of character for me, fear, putting on a brave face, covering up, and not telling you the truth, because I didn't want to know the truth myself, because it hurt. But now I prefer the truth, because if I take little doses of truth on a daily basis, I'm okay. And then step 7, we knew we had to make a settlement with the fundamental principle of step 6, which is letting go old behaviour. So we decided that while we still had some flaws of character that we could not yet relinquish, we ought nevertheless to quit our stubborn, rebellious hanging on to them. We said to ourselves, this I cannot do today, but perhaps I can stop crying out, no, never. So in other words, old behaviour patterns are not necessarily good for us all the time, and so we bolt to getting rid of them. But the truth is, in there, they keep us stuck in old ways, old attitudes and behaviour. Then in step 7, we humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. And my shortcomings are, or were, still probably are, to a great degree, not enough courage, not enough faith, and not enough confidence to be truthful, to let out the truth of me. Because if I tell you I'm vulnerable, but actually I'm not. The more you know me, either you do want to know me or you don't want to know me. And we need to get over that fear, because some people we fit with and click, some people we will never fit with or click at all. Then in step 7, just repeat this bit, in step 7 we humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings such as He could or would under the conditions of the day we asked. So it's contingent on what is life today. So if you ask for your defects to be removed under excess and duress, and where you're in an old situation, you're not hiding to nothing on your own, but if you ring up a friend or get to a meeting or do something differently, then you're moving forwards rather than being stuck in the old maladies. In step 8 we continued our house cleaning, for we saw that we were not only in conflict with ourselves, step 8 being the list of amends that we have discovered we need to make because of our behaviour before, and being willing to make them. So step 8 is the list and willing, not doing it. You do the list and be willing. You work on it and then you decide with help what comes next. So in step 8 we continued our house cleaning, for we saw that we were not only in conflict with ourselves but also with people and situations in the world in which we lived. We had to begin to make our peace, and so we listed the people we had harmed and became willing to set things right. We followed this up in step 9 by making direct amends to those concerned, except when it would injure them or other people. So we do want to make restitution where we can and where it's possible without doing harm to others. And there's also an issue of self-harm in doing these things as well. What is the point in going back to a certain point in time which will cause harm to others and probably to ourselves if there is no good reason to do it? You know, sometimes it's just too late, and then there is a way of dealing with that too. By this time, at step 10, we had begun to get a basis for a daily living, and we keenly realised that we would not need to continue taking personal advantage. Start that one again. Step 10, we had begun to get a basis for daily living, and we keenly realised that we would need to continue taking personal inventory. So step 10 is a daily basis. We look at our assets, liability, what's happened, what's worked, what's disturbed us, and what are we grateful for. And as we take personal inventory, and that when we were wrong, we ought to admit it promptly. In other words, we clear the wreckage of the day on a daily basis. Hopefully we make the necessary adjustments to our attitude and behaviour and put things right where we can as they happen, because we know they're happening, because we feel the anger and resentment or something building in us. In step 11 we saw that if a higher power had restored us to sanity and had enabled us to live with some peace of mind in a sorely troubled world, then such a higher power was worth knowing better by as direct contact as possible. And how do I get my higher power activated? In meetings when I hear the truth, love and wisdom from the greatest number who know how to be sober, and also accessing the greatest number with truth, love and wisdom outside the fellowship as well. So for me, truth, love and wisdom works in the moment. And also we learn all the time, so we are amending and adjusting our attitudes and behaviour as life is going along. So power of prayer, meditation and listening, no matter what it is, your higher power, listening to the God or good conscience that is there around us. And we all do it in our own way. Sometimes loudly, outwardly, sometimes inwardly with inner reflection. It's how you choose to do it which counts for you. But the point is, it's settling our minds into a pattern of understanding where we are today, the possible and the not possible. The persistent use of meditation and prayer, we found, did open the channel so that where there had been a trickle, or nothing in my case, there now was a river which led to sure power and safe guidance from God, as we were increasingly better able to understand Him. And it's your understanding of God. There are 6.5 billion people on the planet, all with a good idea of what they are believing in, and your opinion, belief and view of God, as you understand Him, is what counts. Believer, non-believer, is what you choose to understand. But spiritual, getting into the moment of now, does require some reflection and meditation. How to get there, how to stay there, how to move on. So practicing these steps, we had a spiritual awakening about which finally there was no question. Looking at those who were only beginning and still doubted themselves, the rest of us were able to see the change setting in. So I didn't see the change in the first 90 days of my sobriety, and I didn't see the change in the first year because I was still so scared of life, fearful of making it worse again and falling back into the malady. And what I didn't realise was I was surrounded by people who had gone through all these things, and if I'd shared more openly I'd have found out, or if I'd been able to listen more easily to what was going on, I would have found out sooner. But you know what, we can only learn at our own pace. And what I like at the moment is my recovery is going along slowly enough so I get my feelings back and understand them, and slowly enough so I'm sticking with the moment of now rather than fantasizing about the future or getting stuck back in the past. From great number of such experiences, we would predict that the doubter who still claimed that he hadn't got the spiritual angle, and who still considered his well-loved AA group the higher power, would presently love God and call Him by name. You know what? The word God doesn't disturb me. It's how it's interpreted by religious orders. And the word God in each person's mind is what they come to believe. And for me, I know I'm surrounded by powers greater than me all the time. The wisdom of the universe, the wisdom of the man next door, the wisdom of my neighbours, the wisdom of whatever it comes from, which makes life work a little bit better, with truth being the foundation. And I've often wondered what spiritual was. Well, of course it's founded on truth. Truth of where we are now, the moment of now, and how it works. And I'm not confused beyond the moment of now. I don't know what's coming next, who knows? But whenever things are difficult, I know what will help me. And it's the Serenity Prayer. It's very simple around what we can do and what we can't do. But if we actually stop long enough to actually say to ourselves, I need to accept what I cannot do today, and have the courage to change those things I can, and learn the wisdom on a daily basis, then I would be a lot happier, because can do, can't do, what I can do today, what I can't do today. So the Serenity Prayer is daily reflection for me, part of my 1, 2, 3 steps of waking up, powerless over people, places and things, and if I try to control anything, I'll probably drink again and life will be unmanageable, and also unmanageable if I try to control anything. And step 2, the insanity is always there. If I want to go stepping back into the madness, it's always there to greet me. And step 3, let go and let God, or let go and let good conscience, or just let go and let good things happen to us. There is the Serenity Prayer, which works for me. So to God or good conscience, as you choose. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. For me, is just for today. Don in London, hello. It's December 29th, 2009. 2 days to a new decade. And my video is all about recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour. My substance of addiction, alcohol, my behaviour, equally addictive. Work, relationships, striving for perfection, and never so. And the gift these days is to know striving is a good idea. Striving to enjoy life, have a life, find out who I am on a daily basis, just learning a little bit more about what is the truth of living. So, what was it like in addiction? 35 years, taking the edge off, trying to find conviviality, joyfulness, accessing my sadness, probably to extremes, simply because that's what booze did. It took me out of myself because I didn't know who I was, and there was a great big empty gap inside. I never knew was supposed to be there, not to be filled with fear, but to be filled with life experience. And of course it was filled with life experience of the things I thought I ought to be doing, things I thought I should be doing to look right, to put a brave face on, to cover up the gap inside, which was full of fear, with ego, and not tell people what was going on. Excuse me. And that led to a life of denial about who am I, by trying to be whatever it is I thought the world wanted me to be. And I never knew that people actually went out and tried to be themselves and to live life in a way which was helpful to personal growth, spiritual growth, emotional understanding of the ever-present moment of now. So it's been a difficult life, and I guess I'm a chip off the old block. My old man, my father, he had a difficult start, adopted, very difficult childhood, not too well, a war experience which shaped his attitudes and behaviour, one of which was to drink as much as he could, as often as he could, because that's what people did. So I followed him very early on, and in my early childhood life was difficult. Sometimes we were fairly well accommodated, and other times through bankruptcy and I suppose poor judgment, or just the luck of the draw, as we find in life today. It doesn't all go the way we might have wanted or wished, and so interestingly enough, roles were reversed. We helped my father stay alive a long time, and he was a very lonely person, because drink does that. Even though you're in company, it isolates and makes us unable to communicate our real feelings. And it was only in his last 3 months of life where he was able to examine what was going on. He was told he had 3 months to go, and he stopped drinking and smoking, and he started getting honest, and he shared from the heart. And I asked him, "Why have you stopped drinking, Dad?" And he said simply, "I have nothing to fear. I know what's going to happen." But he had remorse and regret and resentfulness about how life had turned out, and how he had turned out, and it was only in the cold light of day, as sober as can be, that he actually understood a little bit more about how much he cherished everyone around him, how he loved people around him, but the drink isolated him. And the reason why I relate this is because it did exactly the same thing to me. And for whatever reason, somehow I got to that moment of clarity which said, I cannot beat this addiction on my own, simply that. And family, friends, community, all helped keep me alive long enough to get there. And then came along the fellowship of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm now an absolute fan of AA. But along the way, I hated the suggestion that I might find it beneficial. And I also found, in my first meetings, how rageful and resentful I was, to the point of going out drinking again. For quite a while, I used to treat it as a training course and go on a Sunday morning to a meeting which was local to me, get completely rageful at all these happy people, and go via the off-license or the bar or the supermarket, buy a bottle of vodka, drink it, fall asleep, wake up later, still resentful, rageful, and very, very resentful against myself for not being able to stop, and buy more vodka, and more, and more, and more. So these days, the Fellowship of AA is no longer a monster. It's not a cult, it's not full of dogma, it's just full of people who are unique, authentic, and find their path and the road to recovery. So when I look back at this year, it's been a really good year for personal growth. Loving people, being loved back, and being useful, and at the same time really understanding that I am only now really understanding what it's like to live sober. And last night was a sleepless night. Don't know why, just was. No anxiety particularly. No anxiety. I was looking for some, but I hadn't got any. I just woke up and I couldn't sleep. So there you go. But AA, the fellowship, keeps me on track. And there's a statement of intent, and then I'll share a bit of the literature about what is going on. So AA, the preamble or statement of intent, goes like this. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And there are 12 steps of action which are available to individuals to take up and live. Principles in which we can live sober and have a happy life, or a sad life, as life affords, because it's not all a bed of roses. So the gift for me is, I know who I am today. I'm Don in recovery, and life is working one day at a time. And later I've got tests at the hospital for other matters, but that's just the way it is. So, daily reflections, this one. For today, 29th of December. Therefore, the joy of good living is the theme of AA's 12th step. AA is a joyful program. Even so, I occasionally balk at taking the necessary steps to move ahead, and find myself resisting the very actions that could bring about joy I want. I would not resist if those actions did not touch some vulnerable area of my life, an area that needs hope and fulfillment. Repeated exposure to joyfulness has a way of softening the hard outer edges of my ego. Therein lies the power of joyfulness, and to help all members of AA. And the gift of joyfulness is that we also get the gift of sadness, because we start to know the difference, and as we go along we find what is good for us and what is not good for us. And drink is not good for me. Obsession, trying to be perfect, covering up the fear. One of the greatest gifts and the greatest strengths is to know our vulnerability, to be ourselves, and that some people will like us and some people won't. And we don't need to put a brave face on anymore, and we can accept where we are, just as we are, without having to worry about what other people think. What a gift. So, at the end of these videos I will say the Serenity Prayer, which is to the God of your understanding, or your good conscience, or a higher power, or just an acceptance of where we are today. And that Serenity Prayer saves my life many times on a daily basis when I feel like acting out and taking a drink or something else. So, to God or good conscience, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference is, for me, just for today.